It all got started when I was looking for a solution to help my son. We tried everything, like every different environment that I put him into: private school, homeschool, boarding school, homeschool, military academy. Yes, he got kicked out of homeschool twice. I would get a phone call, he's not following the program. You need to come and get him. And literally, I had to come and get him from all of those different environments. And I was trying to avoid him becoming the troubled teen. And I heard about those therapeutic programs where kids get sent away as a troubled teen. And I just thought if I could find the right environment for him, then he wouldn't end up there. But there he ended up. And there he still was, And I got a call from the founder of that program. Same thing. He's not following the program. What are we going to do? And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. You have created this program to help kids like him. So what are we going to do? And whatever you believe in, God, fate, universe, something, introduced me to the founder of a neurofeedback company down in Hilton Head, South Carolina. He was just getting into the field, trying to make it easier for chiropractors to incorporate it into their businesses. And, he gave me some information on it. I had a conversation with him, and I was like, that makes sense. There's got to be something going on in his brain, So I went through the training, 3-day training. He trusted me with the system, and I drove from South Carolina to nowhere, Utah, and set it up in that school for troubled teens that my son found himself in. That was the beginning of my journey with neurofeedback. I started running sessions from 9 a.m. till 9 at night, like every day of the week and a half a day on Sunday. And it was on the students, on my son, and also on some of the staff. And what I started to see was they had a similar brainwave pattern that was dysregulated. And then I also started to see that every one of them started to improve in some positive way after receiving these sessions for a couple weeks. So some of them started to sleep better. A couple of the teachers and kids were able to reduce medications, started focusing better. I watched my son, his dark circles under his eyes started to lighten up, which I never knew he had a sleep issue. I wouldn't have guessed that. He started to actually think about participating in elements of the program. And eventually 40 sessions just saved his life. It gave him this pause before reacting that he never had since birth. Once I saw that this simple technology that's non-invasive could actually improve so many lives, I was like, why the heck haven't we heard of this? Why is this not available? So I became the trainer for that company to teach doctors and providers how to do it. And then I opened a bunch of offices all over the country, like over a half dozen offices. And then by the end of, I think it was 2017, 2018, I realized that I needed to kind of switch my strategy, and I wanted to go back and help those therapeutic programs. So, for instance, I'm here in San Diego for the Young Adult Transition Association conference to support these programs, because I know the families that end up placing their kids somewhere they're traumatized. They need this. So I launched Symmetry and branded my own software to specifically help that industry. And now in the last year, we're also branching out to help high-end clinic owners, longevity, biohackers, anybody that has that audience that's looking for this type of a holistic option. It was started back in the 1960s by accident. And they found out that they were able to train cats to produce certain brainwaves at will. And then those cats were accidentally brought into another study where they became resistant to seizures when they were exposed to hydrazine rocket fuel. So we know it's not a placebo effect, that by increasing certain brain waves, it changes the structure and the function of the brain. The science shows that after 20 sessions, there are changes in the gray and white matter of the brain. So there's been proof to this since back in the 60s, and it's just come a long way even since then. They became resistant to seizures when exposed to rocket fuel. It's kind of crazy, but that is significant. When people hear that, they get it, that there were changes to the structure and the function of the brain, and that's what happens to us. How can the structure and function of your brain change? But it happens all of the time when we learn something new. Every time a baby is crawling a certain way, they're changing the structure and the function of their brain. Every time we practice something, when we learn to ride a bike or write with a pencil, we practice, 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 and pretty soon we're doing it without thinking about it. That's neuroplasticity. It's the same concept in neurofeedback. We're just using technology to drive those changes rather than a physical exercise or a practice.
What kind of people benefit from, in your experience, from this? What kind of issues, ailments?
Yeah, what kind of people benefit? It's interesting. I always think, well, the common factor is the brain, and we all have a brain. So not only somebody that has a diagnosis or an issue of like mood regulation or stress management issues, sleep issues, focus, attention, but peak performers use this. Professional athletes can improve their game, musical performance, businessmen. It doesn't have to be that there's something wrong with you. But historically, because it's not that available, it does end up being kind of the end of the line when somebody finds it, unfortunately. And we need to change that. There are so many people talking about this now, like Dr. Daniel Amen says, we need to be looking at the brain. Every other type of provider, cardiologists look, all of the different doctors are measuring something except psychiatrists and counselors. They're not looking at the brain. And that's almost unethical now because we can look at the brain. It's very easy. Literally, I was presenting at the American Association of Christian Counselors, and there were about 140 in the room. And I mentioned the fact that it's almost unethical that we're not looking at the brain now. They all nodded their heads. Because we can. It's super easy now with this technology. There's no excuse not to take a look at what's happening in an individual's brain. I just heard that in 2024, the neurofeedback market was at 1.35 billion. By 2032, it's projected to be 2.35 billion. It's a huge growing industry. And now's the time to get in. I just believe this is going to be standard part of our daily lives. I mean, look at what we're measuring. We're measuring our heart rate. We're measuring our sleep. We're measuring our steps. We're measuring our blood glucose levels, with all of these monitors. Why aren't we measuring our brainwave activity? It's going to be a regular part of our life. I believe it is. Scientists have been studying the brain for decades now, and they know what healthy patterns are in the brain, and the brain should be able to shift very easily back and forth between different patterns. The problem arises when a brain gets stuck in certain predominant brainwave activity that shouldn't be produced at that time. So it's just, there are normative databases out there, and what is normal? Is there really a normal? No, but our brains should be in certain patterns depending on what we're doing at certain times. We know that, and when that's disrupted, that's when people have symptoms. That's when they don't function as well as they could. So originally, 15 years ago, when I was introduced to neurofeedback, we didn't even have the QEEG brain maps. We used a single sensor in the middle of the head, and we measured certain brainwave patterns with the eyes open and with the eyes closed. And based on that information, we were able to learn enough about what the brain needed to learn to do the sessions. That saved my son. So I used that for years. Then along came the QEEG brain maps, and we had access to that. So that gave us even more information. At that time, it was like 12 sites. A few years later, now we're measuring 19 sites on the brain, a little bit more information. Let's talk about the measurable results too. For the providers, they're now, when they bring our system in, they're able to show physical changes in somebody's brain. So being able to measure that gives people so much hope, and then you can actually show them the progress along the way, not just with neurofeedback, but with your other modalities. You can do, maps at any point of the process. There are so many clinics out there now that are bringing in cryotherapy and, oxygen therapy and HBOT and all of these different things that help the body. And that's great that we're looking at that, and we're biohacking, and we're trying to, extend our lives and everything. But they're missing the brain, and that regulates everything in the body. It goes hand in hand. So by bringing this element in there, it's the missing piece of the puzzle for holistic health and wellness. It just makes sense. I think Everybody has an element of not being able to relax when they need to in this day and age. You may call it anxiety or hypervigilance, but we're constantly stimulated by things in our environment, by the electronics that we use. And I've watched in the QEEG map reports, even before the pandemic hit, that our patterns of anxiety were going up in the map reports. Physically changes in our brain, and we're constantly doing it with technology. So that's happening. That means almost everybody can benefit that uses like a cell phone. So why not? The industries, those market segments that should be attracted to this are peak performers, first responders, parents, teachers, sports professionals, business people, really anyone that's under stress. Some people feel intimidated or afraid, literally scared to do something that's going to affect the brain. But this is just technology-driven learning for the brain. It allows the brain to learn as it's ready. It's not going to force the brain to do anything. But there are some types of neurofeedback out there that do use a low-level current or a magnetic stimulation or something to kind of drive the brain to change quicker. If you're going to use that type of technology, you have to be comfortable with that. But Symmetry Neuro-Pathway training, we use technology-driven learning for the brain that's very non-invasive and non-intimidating. So if you choose to work with us, it's important that we have alignment because we are working with you. We're not just selling you a bunch of equipment and leaving you on your own. We are hand-holding, basically. We have standard operating procedures that we're going to provide for you. We have ongoing mentorship, and we have 4 levels of additional training that you can go through as well. So we don't just sell you equipment and leave you on your own. We're there to support you all along the way and continuously communicate with you and your team to ensure the best results for your clients and your business. It's definitely the emerging trend right now with cutting edge technology, but it's a difficult industry to get into historically. So this way we come in with a system that's proven. You can show measurable results for your end users and your clients. And we make it very simple because we incorporate everything that you need, the hardware, software, the training, and the support. Yep. So if you bring in brainwave regulation, you're going to stand apart from others in your industry because it is a difficult field to get into. And so you'll set yourself apart. You can attract additional clients instead of referring them out for services. You can bring it in-house and keep those clients within your business, therefore driving up your revenue. And it's very low maintenance. You can have an entry-level technician running it. You don't have to be a neuro guru, and your most expensive staff member doesn't have to run this process. Many of our clients bring this service in and increase their revenues by like 5 figures or more monthly instantly, because across the country, people are charging anywhere from $100 to $250 per session for neurofeedback. And then the mappings can range, the lowest I've heard is like $300, but some people are charging up to $1,500 for a QEEG brain map. So a standard package of 40 sessions, a minimum is going to be $6,000 in revenue or higher depending on your client base. So that's an instant boost to your revenue stream without a lot of work.
And then insurance is paying for this? Does insurance recognize neuro?
No, it's really hit and miss. Yeah. It's mostly private pay. It's hit and miss with the insurance across the country. There are some people that are using a therapy in conjunction with biofeedback code. And then there is another code on the medical side of it that you have to negotiate with the insurance company. And it depends on who is doing it and why. So it's usually private pay is the easiest. And if you're doing in-office, clients come in 2 to 3 times a week for about 45 minutes per session. So what we bring to the table is right now our focus is helping providers provide neurofeedback. The field of neurofeedback is very disjointed. There are companies that sell expensive, fancy equipment. There are some companies that do training. There's one organization that's trying to do certification, but it's very complicated and intimidating for people to get into the field. So what I've done is pull together, from my experience of 15 years of doing this, a very simple method to bring this into clinics and practices to make it very easy and non-intimidating for people to do it.
What is that?
What is that? It involves our hardware, software, our training, and our ongoing support. It's all tied together.
And how does that look like step by step for someone who's watching this video who might be a future?
Step by step, it's ideal to have a conversation first so we can figure out what plan makes the most sense for your business model, because we have a couple different ones. We'll come in and literally provide the services for you and just do like a contractor split with you, revenue split. Or we can come in, and if you want to purchase the equipment and the training and the support, we can come in and teach you and your staff how to provide. So it's best to start with a conversation with us. Hey, I'm Diane Costo, founder and CEO of Symmetry Neuro-Pathway Training. If you found this video interesting, I'm looking forward to talking to you a little more about your business and learning if bringing in brainwave regulation might be a great fit for you.